be worth it. The Routemaster was purpose-built and built to last.
It was decided at the onset that the RM life would be 17 years, but it's well exceeded that. I mean, nowadays the life of a bus is about 12 years, and the RM owes us nothing.
By the late 60s, the government was tightening its belt. London Transport was state-funded. Its policy of running purpose-built buses became a target for cutbacks.
In 1968, Barbara Castle, who was an absolutely marvellous Minister of Transport normally, was persuaded to bring in a young transport economist from Oxford. And he said that we must standardise buses. The decision to abandon the Routemaster was the first symptom of a disease that has gone right through British industry, of not listening to the people on the ground.
Standardisation meant introducing driver-only buses, with doors at the front and engines in the back.
It was a disaster, but they were, well, we couldn't get staff, and I suppose somebody thought, well, if we go one manning, we've got all the conductors can become drivers, but that's wishful thinking. But
when one-person buses were introduced in the 70s, they were popular with accountants, but passengers and engineers were unimpressed. The driver-only buses were not designed for London's tough conditions and couldn't cope.
And as the operators said, they were absolutely useless because they broke down all the time, they were too big, the transmissions didn't work, nothing bloody worked. So what you find now is that none of those buses lasted, and it wasn't until the 1980s that they started managing to produce buses that would be suitable for London. But they weren't the Routemaster. They were much bigger than the Routemaster, they were uglier than the Routemaster, they were much less comfortable than the Routemaster.
putting the engine at the back increased the unbalanced weight at the back, overheating problems and so on. The driver was not responsible for vandalism inside the vehicle, especially double decks. He disclaimed all knowledge of that, whereas we had a conductor walking around. He could see what was going on.
Ironically, as London Transport struggled to find an adequate driver-only bus, the Routemaster continued in faithful service. And a casual glance around central London today still reveals more Routemasters than their modern rivals. On more than one occasion, the scrapyard has loomed on the horizon. But now, over 40 years after its launch, the Routemaster has been given one final reprieve. The Routemaster is the great survivor of the golden age of London transport. It is also the four-wheeled friend of Richard Zarivach and London's mayor.
Ken Livingstone is a fan of these buses. He's bought 31 of them so far back to put back into service in London, which is a testament to the design.
We now live in an age of virtual reality and even space travel. But in Livingstone's London, the bus is again seen as a solution. And it's not this bus, but these. These old Routemasters left London many years ago. Some had retired to Reading. Others were found in fields. Ken Livingstone believes that despite their age, Routemasters with their open platforms help to keep London moving. He's brought these old buses back to London. They will be upgraded with new engines and interiors along with the rest of the fleet. The mayor believes this is a value for money option. When Ken Livingstone took over as mayor, London Transport was replaced by a new body, Transport for London. Almost immediately the policy on the Routemaster changed. London's favourite buses were due to be phased out by 2002, but since Livingstone's election, his new team have scoured the country looking for more. The Routemaster will be with us until at least 2010.
There's excellent practical reasons for keeping the Routemasters. You get 3 Routemasters for one modern new bus. And there's the speed. Because the conductor got on and collected, you got on and paid the fares to the conductor who came round, you didn't have these great delays that you now get with one-person operated buses.
But some believe the Routemaster is a dinosaur. John Biggs is Labour's chair of the Greater London Authority's Transport Committee.
The Mayor's decision to buy 31 Routemasters out of museums and dusty fields was, in my opinion, a massive nostalgia trip at the expense of Londoners. They are basically clapped out machines, and he should be looking to the future, not the past.
Nostalgia is an important part of our culture, and only some ghastly sort of, dehumanised moron would actually want to get rid of Routemasters.
Olive Murray works on Routemaster Route 98. Her bus is far from clapped out. In fact, it may be a model for the whole fleet. Underneath the red paint and familiar shape is a new, clean-running Cummins diesel engine.
This one sounds much quieter. You hear that? See? Much different. Rolls-Royce engine.
Peter Simmons is Metroline's chief engineer.
This new engine is a Euro 2 engine. It's 7 times more environmentally friendly with particulates coming out of the exhaust as opposed to the older engine. Although it's 40 years old, it still can hold its head up and say, I'm as clean as you.
To run London's buses, Ken Livingstone has appointed Dave Wetzel, a former Routemaster driver and the man behind the GLC's fares fare policy in the 1980s.
The beauty of the bus is the fact that you can hop on and hop off close to your destination, and it's a much quicker loading bus. Okay, some of us may be a bit nostalgic, but it has a very useful role to play today.
The crucial feature of the Routemaster is its open platform, unique around the world.
I think if you've, let's say, been recently to Istanbul or Rawalpindi, you would say that there is quite clearly a demand for the open platform at the back of the bus. We have people hanging on to the sides. Anywhere they can get a grip, they are hanging on. The open platform is the answer to a maiden's prayer, pretty well from here to Yokohama. I hate the one-man buses. If you sit at the back of the bus, you get your bottom cooked. If you go upstairs, you get mugged. So they are not good buses. As they are presently managed, they are, if it's not a contradiction in terms, mobile traffic jams.
Londoners prefer the open platform for its speed and convenience. Surveys show that just 12% of us would rather catch a driver-only bus. So much for progress. To test the speed and effectiveness of the two types of bus, First Edition followed a Routemaster and a driver-only bus along the same route in the morning rush hour. With the modern bus shown on the left, boarding takes an average of 4 seconds. Boarding the Routemaster on the right only takes 1 second. On the day of our experiment, the Routemaster reached its destination nearly 10 minutes before its driver-only rival. This is matched by research which tells us that driver-only buses are 10 to 15% slower than the Routemaster. As traffic moves at the speed of the slowest vehicle on the road, modern buses contribute to longer journey times for all road users. A return to open platforms could save time for all of us. The Routemaster's combination of open platform and conductor is certainly effective and convenient, but for some, the open platform at the back is a safety hazard.
If you compare this layout with the one where there's a front doorway adjacent to the driver, clearly the bus crew cannot control the passenger movements very easily. So people are tempted to hop on and off between stops or at traffic lights. Also, particularly if someone is alighting, there's nothing very readily available for them to hang on to as they step down from the platform, and that in particular can be a cause of serious casualties. So what we found in London, compared for example with Manchester, where all the buses were of the layout with doors alongside the driver, was a casualty rate much higher especially for the boarding and alighting experts.
With an open back bus, you just hop off. But of course that has its dangers. Some people hop off and a cycle or motorcycle might be coming up the inside. So there are accidents and people do need to be careful.
Some have questioned whether the Mayor's investment in old Routemasters is responsible, given the risks of the open platform.
The Mayor is rightly concerned to make the public transport system more attractive and convenient. But I think you should distinguish between that main objective and particular measures like certain designs of bus, where issues like cost and safety must be brought in, as well as simply the convenience of hopping on and off.
Well, this is a sort of nonsense. I mean, you've got to work on the basis people will behave rationally, and they'll be largely sensible in the way they move around a city and on a transport system, because you can't make a completely safe system. And people know, and I mean, we're told again and again, don't rush to jump on a bus which is moving, and you can't guard against people's free will.
Careful, darling, it's not this stop. It's not this stop, it's not this stop. Careful now.
Ironically, the other main problem with Routemasters is also one of their greatest assets, the conductor.
Oxford Circus.
Bus companies face serious difficulties recruiting and retaining staff. It's not a new problem. In the 50s, London Transport recruited conductors directly from the Caribbean, like Gloria Bailey.
There were posters all over Jamaica saying that there were so many jobs with London Transport, more than any West Indians could possibly cope with. And then, you know, those people who found it difficult to find jobs, they were delighted.
Sadly, conductors are less happy in the job today due to the abuse they get from some of their passengers.
You get assaulted, you get punched in the face, you get slapped, you get spit and spat at, I should say. The generation today that is coming for the job, applying for the job, the young ones, they're not tolerating, they're not taking the abuse, and that's the truth. Because like me, there are certain things I will ignore, but with the young ones, they ain't gonna ignore them.
The difficulty of recruitment was one reason for introducing driver-only buses in the first place. Transport for London believed that the answer lies in enhancing the prestige of the job.
I want to see crews on buses looking upon themselves as managers of that bus and managers of those passengers. And I want passengers to actually behave in a responsible way when they use our buses.
Ken Livingstone aims to double the number of conductors in central London. But there's only 600 Routemasters left, and disability legislation will make them obsolete by 2016. It looks as though a new bus for London is on the cards.
We could produce new buses, Routemasters, perhaps with a door at the front so that wheelchair users can get on and off at the front, low floor buses, and also open back at the rear so people can still hop on and off.
There's no earthly reason why a modern bus shouldn't be designed to the same principles as the Routemaster.
London Transport said that European safety legislation prevented an open platform bus, but Transport for London disagrees.
The old London Transport people were lying. They were doing what a lot of people in this country do, which is saying, oh, we've got to do this because of Europe. When that's completely untrue. They were trying to blame Europe for everything that's unpopular they're doing. As soon as I got in and we checked the law, we found, no, I mean, I could be mayor for 12 years and we still have Routemasters. There's a problem in about a decade's time, but that's got more than enough time to actually come up with a proper successor to the Routemaster.
I welcome the fact that they're looking at designing a new Routemaster. The original Routemasters evolved. They evolved from the best of what went before in London. From the technical point of view, I think you really ought to talk to the people who were involved with the first Routemaster, because they knew what the conditions in London were like. The conditions in London have only changed in that they've got worse.
One person involved in the first Routemaster does have something to say. After 50 years' experience in developing buses for London, Colin Curtis has not given up his dream of replacing the Routemaster. Now in retirement, he's working on a successor to the famous bus.
I picked this up in recent years again, believing that this was the way we should go. The positioning of the engine at the side in a space that isn't fully utilised allows these variations of doors or entrance exits and so on, and even allows a rear platform should it be required. The specification has now been completed for the whole vehicle, in other words the body, the engine, the electrics, the transmission and so on, and we hope to show that to TfL in a matter of a week or two.
There's someone still alive who designed the original Routemaster. They've got plans for another one. Let them come and see me, I'll be delighted.
Perhaps after nearly 60 years of faithful service, these old buses will finally be allowed to retire, to be succeeded by a new double-decker bus, worthy of the name Routemaster.
Well, Mayor Ken Livingstone will be put on the spot by Londoners next week in a special programme on transport. Ask Ken is next Tuesday at 7:30 here on Carlton. Next tonight, a boss's flattery will get him nowhere with Sergeant June Ackland in The Bill.
It can live as long as a dog. Has 32 brain stems.
They'd be on our legs, obviously, wouldn't they?
They have a set of 3 jaws.
And 300 teeth. So that's the